I'm Pavel Drábek. I'm the co-moderator of PQ Talks, and it is my great pleasure to introduce the moderator for the next panel. The panel is called Where to from Here? Towards the future of scenographic practices, and the moderator for the evening for this event is Nevena Mladenovic. Nevena, over to you.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Nevena Mladenovic. I'm a lecturer in interior architecture at the University of Technology in Sydney, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our panel titled Where to from Here? So we begin today by returning to early 2020. I'm sorry to take you back to 2020. In the first week of March, it happened. A scenario anyone could have hardly imagined. A global pandemic. Widespread restrictions across the globe. People instructed to stay at home and save lives. As we moved inside, we collectively witnessed uncanny shots of all sorts of other types of spaces being emptied. Our relationship with space, as well as our place within it, shifted abruptly. Scenographically speaking, our familiar frameworks and practices were interrupted. The world paused, and we suddenly found ourselves in the middle of nowhere. Performances left theatre buildings and other venues, public spaces emptied and became stages of newly devised choreographies, orchestrated actions, gestures, and costumes, to name a few references that speak our language. And in this time, domestic spaces became our only available realm of performance and interaction. These performances and interactions became repetitive, yet far from predictive. In this time, daily actions, sights, and experiences acquired levels of theatricality that transcended those of staged performances. The heightened nature of this theatricality also stemmed from the continuous global state of anxiety, uncertainty, and previously unknown uncanniness of spatial experience. Since we last met in Prague, lines have been blurred multiple times, and spatial, hence also scenographic experiences, have become increasingly ambiguous. Hans Thies Lehmann defines drama or dramatic events as events that are extraordinary and full of excitement. Excitation and event are two connotations of this word, he says. This is often recognized in events in which for a long time the outcome of the event was uncertain, creating a dramatic suspense with regard to the further development and the end. So clearly, this moment in time is dramatic, it is anxious, it is uncertain, but we also must admit we are also finding elements of excitement in exploring the future developments. It is a moment in time for us to question, challenge, and examine the capacities of our practice, of our own capacities, of our role within all of this, and also the agency of scenography, but also the agency of scenographers. So today, we would like to offer a platform for discussion, guided by different case studies from across the world. In this, we embrace scenography as an open concept and explore its agency in the present moment and beyond. And in doing so, we also aim to challenge the boundaries of common scenographic applications and critically engage with the issues of our time and the future of our discipline. So today, these case studies will be presented by our four speakers. We have Eric Villanueva de la Cruz, a transdisciplinary performance maker from Philippines, founder of Taxi Theatre, assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, and a member of the Philippine Educational Theatre Association, who will be presenting first. We then have Alex Tam Hung Man, an artistic director of Theatre Ronin in Hong Kong, theatre director, set and costume designer, screenwriter, curator, and a university guest lecturer. We have Aziza Kadri from Uzbekistan, an interdisciplinary artist exploring migration, identity, and decolonization through immersive projects using AR, performance design, textiles, and costume. And Aziza is also a creative lead at the Blipha and a facilitator of XR workshops. And finally, we have Miljana Vučković from Sanatorija of Serbia, a scenic designer, thinker, and writer on spatial practices, and her main focus is the perception, presentation, and creation of space, its mutability, limits, and potentials. So thank you and enjoy. We'll start by Eric's presentation.
Right, good morning. Mabuhay. I'm Eric Villanueva de la Cruz from the Philippines, and I'm honored to be sharing my practice with you. Oh, sorry. There. Right, and since we are pressed for time, I hope you don't mind, I'll be reading from my notes so I don't stray. All right. So it's been 3 years since the world was stunned with the virus pandemic, and as the world slowly opens and attempts to return to normal, the inadvertent underlying impact to the psyche of the confinement and uncertainty of situations becomes more apparent, especially for most artists who have found themselves disconnected, displaced, and decentered by the pandemic. So personally, I feel that there really is no returning to normal, but only waking up to new realities brought about by the pandemic. And the most important step in fueling our creativity is rediscovering our tools to connect to others, our circumstances, and ourselves. And so Taxi Theater, through its Talier program, conceived the Palaruan, or Playground series. Its first offering is the Creative Sensory Attunement Workshop, otherwise known as Seesaw Playground, which aims to explore ways to assist in this artistic recovery through activities designed to help reawaken, reconnect, and realign the creative self into devising new works from resources readily available to the artist. The first one was launched online for the IFTR Asian Theater Working Group annual conference last March 2022 and has had various iterations since then. One of which is an in-person workshop that taps into the living, breathing natural world through a hike up the mountains of Rizal to the revitalizing and inspiring site of Ground One Arts Retreat Space. So the entire trek is interspersed with sensorial and imaginative activities to help the sentient body regain its sense of aliveness and greater awareness of self and connection to the fragile planet. So the workshop integrates the creative pedagogy of the Philippine Educational Theater Association, or PETA, with the sentient learning of Taxi Theater. The workshop facilitates a conscious, mindful practice of using the senses to recalibrate the creative practice of participants and realize new ways of telling stories and shaping performances. PETA's socially engaged creative curriculum takes into account the diverse social, political, and economic realities. Its aesthetics of poverty encourages artists to embrace and respond to the current circumstances and conditions of culture despite material deprivation and allow it to influence and shape their creative work. And through Taxi Theater, that's theater applied experiential immersive, it's more of a personal platform for me to collaborate with practitioners from various disciplines who share the profound interest in exploring new ways of storytelling and extending audience engagement and experiences. Now, most of my work through Taxi Theater plays around the phenomenology of the senses, my insatiable curiosity over the teeniest exquisite encounters with the outside world has driven my desire to discover different ways of experiencing stories. So these may be stories from the distant past, the present and everyday life, or projections of the future. They may be based on realities, speculations, aspirations, or imagination. Many of these stories may have been told, retold, or reimagined, but as the world we live in changes, I believe that so too must our ways of understanding and appreciating these stories. So currently I'm developing a Taxi Sentient Learning that is collaborative, integrative, reflective, curiosity-based, sentience, and ecosomatic. So leaning more to sensorial and ecological in focus. Right, so going back to the workshop, I'd like to quote Carl Sagan. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies, were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff. So if we are to subscribe to this belief, as you sit there listening to me, to this presentation, well, you can already say that you're a star. Right. So, our industrial and technologically driven society leaves us fragmented and disembodied. We forget that we are more than what we do, we are more than what we have, or we are more than what we consume, or what we like to call binge. So we are more than doing. We are being, and it's a constant journey to become human beings. Matheson and the Creative Project emphasized how advances in neurobiological research are increasingly providing empirical evidence to the essential indivisibility of mind, body, and emotions. Our brains can only develop properly through social contact. We are wired to relate to each other. We need other humans in order to grow, develop, learn, and mature. But, with respect to Madison, the contact that we need does not only rely on human connection. Connection with nature is also beneficial. The nascent practice of somatic psychology recommends immersion to nature to help in depression, anxiety, and stress. So going back to the workshop components, let's take a look at some of them. So we have, integral to the workshop, are activities that help the participants connect to themselves and the environment through breath work. So we have inspiration activities. We also do meditative visualization, body scans, sensory audit, just to prime the sensitivities and reception of the bodies. Then we have visual exploration and sensory exploration. We proceed to explore the various senses through curiosity-based activities that allow the participants to deepen their experience and encounter their surroundings, allow their senses to be immersed. And this is sometimes one of the more difficult parts of the workshop because it aims to at least give you a sense of seeing things or experiencing things for the first time. So once you get that one moment when it's something new to you, even if it's cerebrally, it's familiar to you, then you would have already experienced that particular moment that we were looking for. We also, relying on their instinct and impulse, the participants also engage or tap into their creativity through explorations in writing, sound, and visual arts. So these are the different spaces that the participants were assigned. For the in-person sessions, the participants also explore through movement. And then the participants will integrate everything that came out of the activities right from the very start. So they will collaborate and turn it into a performance. And of course, for the in-person workshop, we won't miss a chance to enjoy and be inspired by the local food and plant a tree while we're there. Right, so to sum up, what the workshop aims to explore resonates with this interesting passage from Lynette Hunter in her introduction, Ways of Knowing and Ways of Being Known, in the book Sentient Performativities. So allow me to read. The performer's work is to risk themselves through practice, to open it to somatic change while melding with the materials of their art making. That opening to change is an embodiment that turned performative work into a medium particular to time, place, and materials. But this is materiality in process. Performers mediate the changes that happen to them when they meld with the materials appropriate to their practice, and these are materials that cannot be fully known. The art makers do not respond by making new or original work. Rather, their task is to meddle with what we discursively and ontologically do not know and generate ways of knowing and becoming with the material. So one of the most important things that we learned from the pandemic is how we've taken for granted the world around us. Everything is fast-paced and consumed in one sitting or binged. Our loss of ability to make authentic and sincere connection to self, to others, and to the environment has left us sometimes unproductive and uninspired. But if we could only recover that ability and awaken the inner life that mirrors the life beyond the boundaries of our bodies, we will discover that around us is an abundant source of energy and inspiration waiting to seep through the pores of our skin and fill the interstitial spaces of bodies with vitality and imagination. And as I'd like to say, it begins by being aware and allowing the minute encounters of our senses make with the environment taking care of each encounter as it strings into moments, precious moments that builds into events, then synthesizes to produce an experience. And as I'd like to ask most of our participants, when was the last time you truly allowed yourself to experience? Right, so that's my contact. If you want to ask something, thank you very much.
Hello, hello everybody. Every people come to the stage, you also have this booklet. The booklet is mainly my speech. So when now I continue to speak, if you don't understand, you can read this stage book. Yeah, but just kidding. Yeah, I will use my whole passion to experience the speech. I think it is the only one you have seen, because although my voice is not very good, but I have a passion. That is theater. This is the live theater. Before, 4 years, almost 3-4 years in the pandemic, all the theater shut down, and I have very few feelings in the theater. So it is a chance to all the people to express my feelings. So this is the PQ talks. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. So why I need a speech on the paper? Because I can follow. Otherwise, I can go to anywhere. A world that was one intimately connected before isolated. As the pandemic spread in 2020, people could only communicate through the interact immediately in a virtual context. Theater that's used to the venue laughter and tears were suspended, leaving one empty theater after another. Theater work would not work their magic. Some give up this spiritual work only to make ends meet. During that time, I was working on a new production of the theater warning, Practice of Zen, a contemporary theater adaptation of an Asian martial art story. Rehearsals stopped due to the sudden outbreak of the pandemic. Performers were facing the fears brought out of the pandemic, while I, as a person in charge of the theater group, had to consider how to keep our work going when show cannot stage. Tasks as simple as keeping breathing have become very difficult at that time. The most important is to keep breathing. As well as we breathe, we are alive. We could not feel the air in the rehearsal room because we all wear masks. We try to contact with our voices muffled and expression concealed. However, as you can see from our eyes, we are determined because we have found a way to face this pandemic. We decided to invite a documentary team to film the rehearsal performance. We found a venue to film it within a day. The team used 5 cameras to shoot spontaneously, capturing different expressions of the performance from the multiple angles. It preserved fully the emotion and overall atmosphere of the performance. The post-production is incorporated scenographic language, including editing, tuning some segments to black and white, color grading, slow motion, and voiceover. Finally, presence of sense, a production that could not stage, become a new art form, a theater movie. It screened in theater in April 2021 when theaters briefly reopened. So now have a look at the video. Thank you. The movie was subsequently screened online at various art film festivals worldwide, and it received the Asian Art Award highly recommend shortlisting at the 2021 Edible Fringe Festival Fringe. The final shot of the movie presents a close-up of the actress. The audience thought they only saw an illusion of her. As she locked on the screen, ding, she was looking at you from another world. We continue to film several unfinished performances in the following 2 years, including Ho Chi the Yearless 2.0 and a many-spender thing. The new form allows the group to continue operating during the pandemic and remains creators of other possibilities for the theater. It is not an art form that vanished afterwards. If you believe it's worldwide, it always found ways to remind you of its existence. Looking back, some world-famous film directors like Ingmar Bergman from Sweden, Shuji Yama from Japan, and Derek Jarman from the UK have created films with their theatrical aesthetic and found their ways of documentary theater through the media of film. As the reopen this year, a many splendid film is finally staged. After the show, I looked at the performance photos. They were connected, and the narrative way they form revealed itself to me. I select 10 from them and shared them online as a photo essay. For you, as a photo essay title, for you who cannot attend the performance, those who cannot see the show can experience its essence through the 10 images. It gives us the performance a new form and attract people to our future performers at the theater. Come to a theater as well, or breathe the same air in the same space. The set of the photos is what you see in your hands, and what kind of story will you imagine? A many splendid thing to be. The pandemic has passed, but what lies ahead for the future of theater? For me, theater is merely a way of contemplating the world. We should switch to various forms with time and space, adapting theater to reach people from different worlds and places. When they feel your world through your theater, love will emerge. The first role of the theater is to convey the most complex emotion in the simplest way. I recall moments of the loneliness in my childhood. On a hot afternoon in Hong Kong's summer, at home alone, I held a broom and imagined it as a saw, reliving the martial art film I have watched the previous night and act as a scene as a hero. The house was my stage. As long as there are people and imagination, everywhere is a stage. I hope by revising our imaginative childhood, we can search for the ultimate meaning of the theatrical assistant. We need to be a gentle storytellers, extract and capture fleeting yet indelible emotion with vivid imagery, and then share them in different theater. It is my original aspiration to establish theater warning. I hope you experience the sincerity of the gift. The theater is a spiritual paradise of the world's never above. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Aziza Kadiri, and I am an Uzbek artist. And even though I'm based in London right now, my main interest still remains within the realm of Central Asian identities and post-social spaces. And today, I would like to talk, here we go, about performative spaces of extended reality. It's really just an arbitrary title because I'm still looking for a language to really describe what I do. But yeah, I thought this was descriptive enough for now. And we're going to talk about spaces and working with spaces and communities using augmented and virtual reality, which is just a part of my practice. but I thought it would be interesting to share some of the cases and case studies that I've done throughout the pandemic and after. So I started to work with XR, so extended reality, XR, during the pandemic. But the experiences I'm going to talk today about are not glamorous or high budget or anything, and they don't exist within, the academic realm or really anywhere where there's any funding. But they all are located on the margins and the fringe. And what I really focus on is exploring the possibility of giving people agency to generate and enhance their own environments through their very accessible digital tools. Or simply put, for them to be able to make the space around them their own using these digital tools. So really briefly, just for context, extended reality, what is it? It's an umbrella term for all these three other things that we hear about all the time. And there were wonderful talks at 360, if you've been there, that went really in depth into all of these technologies. But I'm going to approach it from a slightly different angle today and talk a bit about AR and VR. And to me, XR is actually a wonderful space for performativity and immersion that can evoke deeply emotional and cathartic responses. And before I go into the case studies of the workshops that I did, I would really like to show you 4 examples of experiences from colleagues in the industry and also some of the projects that I've been personally involved in that really sort of prepared me to go into doing workshops with various communities. So the first one is a wonderful collective called Fairman Collective. Maybe some of you have heard about it. They make VR theater. And they've also started, I think, they didn't start, but they created a lot of experiences during the pandemic. And these are just 2 of them. And these experiences are created in VR Chat, which is a completely public, accessible platform. Anyone can create for it if you have a laptop and if you have access to the internet. And what they look at is also, at VR as an empathy machine and, showing various issues with society or, creating these experiences that highlight experiences of people with mental illness. And they play with impossible physics and creating scenography that is just not possible in real life, but it works really well in VR. And then another experience is also created in VR Chat, and it's an anonymous creator called Dr. Moro, and he's an architect originally. But to me, as I'm interested in capturing the liminality of post-socialist spaces, as well as the identities that exist with them, this experience, you just walk through it. There's no interactivity really, or any human guides as opposed to Fairman Collective. But the space itself weaves a very complex narrative, and I feel like, in a way, very similar to the Czech Pavilion. This space becomes a representation of, a specific mental and emotional state, and a sort of a limbo that is quite familiar to those who exist in these post-socialist spaces. So XR allows us to bring to life and highlight the invisible, the unseen, the unspoken, and also the erased experiences. There's a video, yeah, thank you. So this is a project that I've been involved in, and it's a project that looked at phantom-like representation of post-communist narratives and the colonial nature of Moscow and its disastrous dependency on crude oil and energy export. And its narrative depended on elaborate world building and the communication between the physical real world anchors, which were the paintings, and the AR elements hidden in the layer between the physical and digital, so the phygital. And this approach allowed for very interesting interactions and impromptu performances by the audience as they interacted with something that was both invisible but present on the digital layer. And this is when I thought that AR could be a great platform to rapidly enhance digital, real spaces with digital spaces. And I'm gonna talk about one more case. So Urban.x, where X is the name of a city, is a project that we also created in AR. And within this project, we were looking to highlight regional artists and extend the lives of their artworks, street artworks that are often overlooked or erased, especially within the Russian state. And within the experience, we were allowing the viewer to interact with the arts and be immersed in the story specific to each city where the street art existed. And I feel like right now, a lot of these artworks that were featured in this AR experience that you could experience anywhere, starting from where, the artwork was actually. And then, during the pandemic, people just did it at their homes because they couldn't leave. A lot of these artworks are erased, they don't exist anymore, so they only exist within this AR space. And it is particularly important because street art in Russia has become one of the main forms of resistance that is possible. And many artists we work with are being prosecuted and even jailed for anti-war artworks. So this project as well has encouraged me to keep looking for ways to promote accessible XR platforms and encourage their usage in context of communities and social change. So for me, AR especially is this unclaimed space, which is much harder to control by authorities due to its novelty, and it enables somewhat anonymous and safe expression of self and even protesting. And it also allows for creation and recreation of impossible performances and environments. And it's a tool not to show something that's already been, created as a book or anything, but it's a tool to experience space around you on your own terms with your own creations, and also interestingly, a tool that gives agency to those who have no access to institutional support in their work and practice. And that's why a lot of the workshops that I did were in Central Asia and were sort of catered for the people who don't really have any educational access to this. And the intangibility of AR also, as a form, I think, reflects the invisibility of certain experiences that we're trying to convey. So during the pandemic, one of the first things that I did with XR was within an online residency I did with Izolacja, which they were the keynote speakers yesterday, if you've been. Wonderful platform from Ukraine. And I collaborated with also a wonderful Ukrainian artist, Sofia Bulgakova, who's from Odessa. And we held workshops that concerned the inaccessible spaces of Donbass. And we worked online with participants from Ukraine. It was 2020, so it was before the invasion, but Donbass was already going through this process of invasion, pretty much. And so with the participants together, we did poetic exercises connected to the memory of places and spaces that are not accessible anymore. And then we recreated those sort of half memories, half imaginary spaces, but also in a way, spaces that just, they exist in a memory. We recreated those in AR. So there's two images where you can see how we created a step that was described by one of the participants. Other workshops that I did in activism using social AR for Athens Digital Arts Festival and Femagora, which is a feminist foundation in Kazakhstan. These are workshops where we subverted the commercial nature of social AR, because a lot of it is used by brands to promote their lipstick or whatever. But we, on the contrary, use this very commercial platform to create activist statements and create a space for people to be able to protest safely and make statements that are relevant to the issues, with women's rights or political change or ecological issues within the region, because there are plenty, believe me. So what was interesting with that as well, that it was also still during the pandemic, and we had these meetings and we had the entire cyber festival in a digital space where we created a cyber step. So, the steppe being the vast grasslands of Kazakhstan, and this is a cyber steppe with cyber yurts and like all this digital sort of representation of what our ideal space would have been. Then when we were allowed in actual real spaces, I held workshops, a lot of workshops with teenagers and the youth. And this workshop, there's a video, if we could play it, yeah. This was a workshop held in a shopping mall on the outskirts of Moscow. And it was really focused on the migrant youth that, for them, this shopping mall was the only space that they had access to and they could hang out. And a lot of these migrant children and teenagers, they were from Central Asia. because there's still a sort of post-colonial, neo-colonial relationship between Central Asia and Russia. And shopping mall being this very liminal space, without any personality. We were thinking of how we can use augmented reality to really make the space our own, and we also did a lot of workshops. And in the end, you know, the children were able to create experiences that either projected their own ideas of home or nostalgia or like dreams onto the space, or they actually created some suggestions for the shopping mall to you know, create some spaces that would be more friendly for these children. Same thing with these youth workshops in Uzbekistan. And this is what I did in collaboration with Goethe Institute, Uzbekistan, where we used Mozilla Hubs, which is also an open source platform, completely free, to create their own scenographic spaces and to embed their own experiences within VR and then get their friends and their parents to experience and really understand what's going on in their minds, but through this digital space that allows them to really, you know, go into, create those things that are not really possible to create with material means. And this approach, for example, has led to creation of a scenographic space for a music album of a local artist, an up-and-coming Uzbek musician, where anyone could enter this phantasmagorical world in Mozilla Hubs, and it's the world of her grandmother's dreams shortly before she passed, and people could come in and go through the experience, and everything was done completely without budget, completely with their own initiative. And I think it's great that there are these platforms that are accessible to people in Central Asia and also other countries of the Global South to really express those things that cannot be expressed without funding if you want to do them tangibly. And yeah, I'm currently working on ways to expand the storytelling and telling of women experiences, and I want to merge. I'm on a crossroads in a way because I do a lot of activist practice and I also work a lot with technology, and how do I connect those two? So this is an ongoing process, and I'm creating a VR experience that will be very sort of phantasmagorical and theatrical, and I'll keep you updated. There isn't really an answer on what it's going to look like, but never in my craziest dreams could I imagine that I'd be presenting bits of this experience, for example, as a VR avatar in front of a digital audience that actually, you know, clapped physically and everything. And I think it's not a bad thing to embrace these technologies, and these technologies can bring a lot of, you know, positive impact to communities that normally don't have as much institutional support. So yeah, this is the end of my talk, and I want to thank you. And this is my Instagram if you want to follow and ask any questions.
Okay, hello everybody. I don't have a presentation, but I'll have 2 videos at certain points. So happy to be here and happy to be at the end of this, because the project I'm going to talk about will hopefully incorporate like most of the things mentioned here. So I'm going to talk about or present projects that Scenatoria Association, which I'm vice president of, is doing. So Scenatoria is NGO or CSO based in Serbia, in Petrovaradin, which is small, really, really specific community. It's within the old Baroque town, surrounded by Danube River and fortress, and it's kind of really, really divided from the rest of the city and the rest of the community. So like the city residents of Novi Sad, which is like 400,000 people, don't have this particular urban area on their mind at all. And it's part of fortress, so it's really, really specific urban area, which is like people live in heritage, in a monument, and it poses a lot of challenges to their everyday life, and also what they can do, what they cannot do. And so, yeah, I will try to give this really, really short introduction about Scenatoria. We exist for 12-ish years now, and we have several line of programs we developed and we are working with. Our mission is to basically promote built but endangered built heritage. So it's protected officially by various government institutions, but it's completely neglected and it's stuck in between with this protected status. So yeah, a lot of funds are needed to rebuild or repurpose or use in responsible and nice ways, well, nice, responsible ways, this kind of heritage. So we actually do a lot of stuff, but I'll just mention this few that I'm not going to go into details with. So what we do, for example, stained glass workshops, and then we do this we built these pieces that we make through workshops into repurposed and or refurbished and heritage that is refurbished by institutions, so to support this good practice. We also do a lot of publication. We try to at least make documents about heritage that is endangered before it's completely torn down or before it kind of goes into dust by natural or man-led processes. So we try to kind of record as much as we can. And we do a lot of educational walks around heritage. We have these talks that are led by various professionals and experts, but we also have these self-led walks. Like we give free maps so people can go and choose their own paths and directions. And also what we did during the pandemics, which brings us here and like into this context, we were planning on kind of promoting and presenting this particular part of the Petrovaradin fortress that is completely invisible because it is like, hidden in plain sight. And we were trying to do some concerts there, but then the pandemics hit. So first activity, cultural activity, was completely without audience, and the second one was like really, really limited amount of people allowed to come in, even though it's semi-open space, because like everything it's strips of everything except really, really thick walls, because that place it was built and served till the end of it, till the beginning of 19th and the end of its use as a powder storage room. It's called Joseph Powder Storage Room, and can I have now first video? So in the video, you will see like these two activities, which were both musical because we wanted to emphasize the qualities of this particular space. Yeah, we have videos. Yeah, thank you. So on the left side is a jazz concert without audience, and on the right side, it's the same space, Joseph Powder Room, which is like improvisational music, like going on. They were just musicians improvising, and through this really, really two different music type of, different music, kind of musics, we tried to present how this one space could be used for various purposes. Also, like in 2014 and since 2014 till 2020, we organized various activities there as well, like exhibitions or performances, in order to present possibilities of this really, really amazing space. It has great acoustics and amazing architecture that cannot be really perceived only through videos. And this is our mission, like to kind of invite people and show them places they're kind of walking by every day and just don't even notice. And to, in that way, to draw attention. And then when we kind of empower local citizens or wider citizens, like whole city, to kind of see, hey, we have this in our neighborhood, or we have this in our community, and then them to kind of put a pressure on institutions to kind of deal with that space in a meaningful way. So that was one project. Both projects were from 2020, and we kind of discovered that we really need to record things differently, to present, to promote online, and to kind of completely change, because a lot of our work is site-specific, and we need audience to kind of touch the space, smell it, see it, experience it firsthand in order to understand the potentials of it. So, but that's another story. I don't have time for that, like how we adapt it. I'm just like using this to show what we were doing during the pandemics. And now I'm gonna talk like about the real stuff that hopefully our next project, big project, will use all of the things my colleagues mentioned. So we're gonna do something called Space Formers, and we intend to use Alice in Wonderland and Alice behind the mirror to this narrative, which is like really, really worldwide familiar. So you don't need to explain that, and it's kind of really appropriate for all age groups, which is really important to us because we always do site-specific work inspired by particular place, but we always try to involve community as well and to see their take on the space and also like potentials of it. So this is the narrative we're going to use, and we think it's appropriate because of a lot of things. As I mentioned, it is well known to everybody in the first place, but also like Alice is experiencing and discovering herself, but also spaces. And we want to use that possibility to present this amazing industrial heritage space in Novi Sad. It's Shunting Station or Marshall Station. It's basically a place where the trains used to go for the repair. And it's in really, really bad shapes. The videos and the photos I'm going to show to you are from 2019. And it's getting worse. So it's like the last train to catch now, literally. And all puns intended. So I'm going to show you the video later. But yeah, that's the thing. We are now developing this project and idea further with partners from Rijeka in Croatia, because they have this amazing industrial heritage. Like torpedo is invented there, so they have all this like proper industrial heritage, but also this military industrial heritage, like really, really interesting buildings. We also have a partnership with some industrial heritage organizations in Luxembourg, and we are also developing others. We tend to make partnerships now with organizations or bodies from the cities that used to be European capital of cultures, or are now, or are going to be, because through some other projects we realized that this title of European capital of culture brings a lot to the city, but it also takes a lot from the independent artistic scene, and it kind of not really successfully deals with industrial, particularly industrial, but built heritage in general. So we want to address that as well. So that's the reason, or like the mechanics behind how we choose cities as well. So maybe we can have the video because it has no sound and it lasts for 4 minutes, and you can see while I continue talking. And so on the left side are photos, on the right side is the video from this event we already organized with partners from Quadrennial. This is organization, they do circus and they're amazing, and a lot of materials is theirs in these videos and photos as well. So in this activity on the right side, there were experts from City Institution of Monument Protection, doing their part on explaining. We were leading walks and tours about heritage and possibilities of built heritage and what can one do with it. And also the circus was there, the play, workshop for kids, etc. So it's just to see, it's the place where we intend to do this Alice or Space Formers projects. And also, so now we are kind of exploring with our partners, like, what is the best, or can we use it all, because there is so much space, and then you cannot just like give up on anything, but can we use like puppetry, dance, performance, XR, everything, and like I'm really open to suggestions there, like what are the possibilities. And like in order to best present the place through activities, but also to choose the best activities which are inspired by the place itself. So, and that's mainly what we do. We just find different projects and ways to put it. And I'm gonna go now to, yeah, circus as well. I mean, like it fits so well there. And this Alice narrative allows all these mentioned ways. And what I want to kind of, what I want to end is that here, scenography in like the widest, or scenic design, or site-specific scenic design in like the widest possible meaning, all-encompassing meaning, is we try actually to use it as a tool to empower community and bring people together, make them realize what they have, make them proud about what they have, and also take ownership and responsibilities. Responsibility for that particular place. For example, this place is between two largest and most populated urban areas in Novi Sad, and they have a lot of culture there. Like, it was built as basically flats and sleeping areas. Of course, it got more complex through the time, but still they don't have some cultural stations or places where actually to do things on their own. So this is what we're going to use our scenographic practices, is to kind of invite people and then leave it to them to kind of create model with the help of institutions, with the help of guides that will help us do this repurpose in a meaningful and responsible way, like to use heritage actively, not to put it in a museum, but to kind of respect it and recognize possibilities of it in like most meaningful way. And yeah, let me just check. No, I think that's basically what I wanted to say, so thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just mindful of the time, and we're just short of 15 minutes, so we might just open it up to everyone now, because I think we would all benefit more from having a wider discussion rather than kind of just closing that to 5 of us. So has anyone got any questions for any of the speakers?
Hello, I'm Elaine. I teach arts management in the Philippines. So I'm just curious, because you deal with many types of audiences, I'm just curious where is self-reflexivity in terms of like thinking about intimacies develop through your process as makers and designers. Like, how do you see your audiences when dealing with them? Dealing with also new spaces, digital, whether physical or metaphorical. Yeah.
And sorry, was that for Eric specifically, or was that for everyone? For everyone. Sorry, for some reason I assumed it was for Eric. Maybe because you mentioned Philippines.
There should be a microphone next to you, Eric.
I hate being the first. Right. Okay. So sorry, I'm in a country that loves beer, so I just need to take a minute. I had just had beer. Let me think about that. Well, the process in itself is very intimate because it's about a connection of the artist to the materials that they have and try to rediscover a deeper connection. Instead of colonizing a space or imposing your will on a particular material, you kind of have a conversation with the materials and allow it to tell you how it should be shaped or it should be formed. Or inspire you. That in itself is a very intimate relationship with the artist. And because of that intimate relationship that is expressed through the artwork, the audience is also brought into that kind of space. So I think that's how intimacy is formed, through that particular approach.
We do have a mic.
Yeah, we have a mic.
Oh, okay. Do you want to?
Can you repeat your question because too fast?
I'm curious about your reflections in terms of engagement and intimacies developed with your audiences and how maybe it affects directly or indirectly your practice as maker or designer.
I think intimacy is one of the major of the theater sense. And when in the pandemic, I lose this intimacy. I'm very unhappy. So I use a lot of way to, actually, it's very interesting. The intimacy is, finally, is asking myself, to find other way or many ways to get this feeling. So I think it is very interesting, one of the vocabulary of the theater. Isn't it?
If I can just interrupt before you guys go, Alex, I think also the way you've redefined intimacy by giving everyone a little booklet with all of the images was really, for me, was a very intimate, a redefinition of how we can create intimate relationships with theatre. It's not live, but they're beautiful images that everyone could have kind of interacted with on their own, on a very kind of personal level. So there's also an element of that in what I recognize kind of an element of intimacy that you've just reshifted for us in a different form. Sorry to jump in.
For me, it was actually the opposite, and I think in what I do, first of all, I don't really have an audience per se. I would say maybe the audience that I'm going to talk about are the participants of the workshops. And the pandemic actually brought a lot of more intimacy and liberation because of reasons like I am more limited by borders, by physical borders, and then having everyone online and doing all these things online gave me access to a lot more, not just, you know, intellectually, but also emotionally when I work with the participants, because, you know, even though there's this weird distance while you're Zooming and you're like online and doing all these online conferences, whatever, the fact that, you know, there's this like semi-anonymous presence that you can create for yourself and for the participants, that was actually more, like it allowed them to open up more, especially, for example, in the workshop that we did with Ukrainian participants, where they, because of this distance, actually created a more intimate relationship with me as an artist and with Sophia, where they not confess is the wrong word, but like they opened up about things and memories that they probably would have never spoken if we were face to face. So yeah, that was sort of my completely opposite experience.
Yeah, well, I can talk about these our previous projects, which were always like site-specific, live, and we would lead these walks or facilitate them and help, and in that way we were always really present, and also from one to another point through these walks, for example walks, we would chat with people and kind of connect in that way, which I think is one of the things for like these stained glass workshops, which were open, like people could come, apply, and then learn how to do these one techniques of stained glass workshops, because one of our members is a proper stained glass master. I think it's like with every manual work or apprenticeship, in a way, like you really get to connect through time. So I think, but that they are again participants in a way. They are not like regular or audience in a classical way, or like that said. And as for this Space Formers project that is now being developed, I'm not sure how it's gonna end up, but so far I think that it will be really, really exciting to see how we communicate, like without words, or with like in English, all the participants, or like if we're gonna skip that. So yeah, I guess I'll discover that as well. Yeah, hopefully that answers. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There's.
Hello, my name is Cameron. I'm a student at York University, and I had a question for you guys about your approach to accessibility within your work. As someone myself who, for example, gets incredibly motion sick doing virtual reality experiences, and just thinking about the title of the panel, like, does moving forward, moving towards the future, does that then lead to people being left behind?
Wow, it's a great question.
Anybody wants to start? I guess virtual reality was yes. It is a big question, and it is a limitation of technology at the moment, I think, and getting like, in a way, when I was getting into VR, I was also getting super motion sickness and everything. And oftentimes it's the case of just doing that constantly and then getting used to it. I understand that's not for everyone, but I guess the only answer in terms of that would be just waiting for a better technology, because it will come. And it is a known problem that people get motion sickness and they cannot stay within an experience longer than 15 minutes. And they're actively working on sort of making that not happen again. But yeah, it is about limiting the experiences that you plan to 10 minutes. It is about limiting and knowing these limitations that, for example, you cannot use strobes, you cannot use like very fast moving objects, and you just work from those limitations. Yeah.
Can I now jump in? Like, I have something completely different to add, so that's the reason I'm jumping in. Like, for example, in this PQ program, you have all these like symbols, like you need your own headphones for this or that activity, and that's also something like to continue in that, like you need to be equipped, and I'm not. So some things I have to give up or come tomorrow better prepared. But like regarding this in physical spaces, and if I can just like add, going towards the future, I'm not sure like that practice that I'm talking about is like only future oriented. It's mainly like kind of on all the sides. It kind of is really based in the past, because we deal with heritage and possible futures for the heritage. But like if we talk about like availability and accessibility to everybody, we always tend to, as you know, historical cities are not really accessible to everybody all the time. So we really try to incorporate that when we plan our activity, to have at least 2/3 of activities or points accessible to everybody, and also to involve professionals that could help us like communicate. For example, when talks are just like talking, to kind of have all printed and etc. To kind of have at least 2/3 of program available so everybody can experience majority.
I'd like to weigh in on that as well. The thing is, during the pandemic, with all of the performances and conversations migrating to the online, I think what it did was it has highlighted the disparity in terms of abilities, right? And it became, for me, I think, the world's became more conscious about these disparities. That's why people are now exploring how you can engage with audiences that are hard of hearing when it's online. How do you engage with audiences who have difficulty, who have visual impairments? I think it's already there. It's starting, the consciousness is deeper now. And it just reminded me that the reason why I engage in sensorial practices was I got hooked into this theater in the dark, wherein you remove the visual sense and you plunge the audience into the senses. And it kind of led me to a bit of disability performances as well, wherein I actually learned a lot from people who have difficulties in their senses, because they have a different way of looking at the world and experiencing the world. And I think that's why I'm more for an inclusive world wherein people can learn from each other, value their senses, and find ways on how they look at things or learn from things. And I think despite the technology that's developing now, I mean, technology is a tool, right? Sometimes we forget that. We use able to do something. And in terms of scenography, where scenography is going to, we have all of these tools available, and we just need to go back and figure out, how do we use them? Why do we use them? I think that's the more important question.
Just a little remark. Actually, for me, I liked reality. During the pandemic, first time I hate virtual reality or the virtual things. But this is a door to go to the theater of future. If no pandemic, I have no sense to produce the theater movie. After finish the theater movie, this is a way to screening to different countries, and maybe the next PQ can screening the whole movie. Yeah, this is the way to change. I think now is time to think the theater. How can we change to what kind of things? I think it is a very good time to everyone to think. Thank you.
Can I just add a little bit as well? In terms of it being a tool and just, yeah, in terms of accessibility and availability, I'm an advocate for democratization of XR, and that's why I try to promote, especially, you know, within the regions that I work in exclusively publicly available and free and open source programs that, you know, for example, if you do AR, you don't use any other platform but web AR, which have, you know, a lot of platforms that are open, and then the audience can use any phone that has any camera. If you have an iPhone 3, you can still do it, and use AR just on your browser. So just trying to find these these tools that have very easy entry points for people who are not even, you know, tech savvy, and there are still limitations, of course, but we're trying to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of responses to the changes that we encounter, it's always extremes, right? We have, when there's new technology, people would immediately gravitate towards it, and the opposite spectrum, you'd have people, oh, let's go back to nature. But I think the key is striking a balance between the two, and that's where I think scenography would probably go to.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. We can take all of these conversations outside. That would be lovely. And I think the general response is we're not leaving. We don't aim to leave the people behind. And one of the kind of common threads from all of the presentations was really this idea of community and emotions and sincerity in all of that. So we are more than happy to continue the conversations outside so that we can prep for the next talk. Thank you, everyone.
But before the conversation, please let me ask you to thank Nevena, Eric, Alex, Aziza, and Milena. Okay, thank you very much.